The waitress, with her years of dedication at the small diner, worked tirelessly through double shifts, managing to scrape by. Yet, despite the fatigue, her kindness remained unwavering. Upon spotting a delicate boy in a wheelchair, trembling in the rain, she acted without a moment's pause. She welcomed him inside, offered him nourishment, and ensured he felt secure. Across the street, an affluent observer was scrutinizing their every action. The boy's father was the billionaire, and her small gesture of kindness was on the verge of unlocking opportunities she had never dreamed of. The rain poured down in unyielding torrents, hammering against the pavement of Lexington Avenue, transforming the fractured sidewalk into a slippery, chaotic expanse. The streetlights flickered, casting a faint glow that struggled to illuminate the weathered buildings standing sentinel along the street. The hour was late, well past 11, and the diner was meant to be shutting its doors. Yet Serena Carter had always been the kind of person who welcomed others with open arms. Not at the moment they required assistance. Not when the world had already done plenty to push them down. As she wiped down the counter, her chestnut-brown skin glistening with sweat from a demanding 12-hour shift, she caught sight of a small figure outside. A young boy slumped in a worn wheelchair, his dark hair clinging to his forehead, a frayed coat offering little protection against the chill. He sat just beyond the glowing neon sign of the Lexington Diner, his hands clutching a worn blanket that offered little warmth against the biting cold. Serena furrowed her brow, placing her rag aside. She swung the diner door open, a shiver coursing through her as the wind rushed in. "Hey there, darling," she said softly, kneeling down next to him. "What brings you out here by yourself?" The boy recoiled momentarily, then raised his gaze, his blue eyes wide with uncertainty, probing for answers. "I'm waiting for my dad," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above the sound of the rain. Serena surveyed the street, her gaze shifting from one end to the other. Not a soul. The faint shimmer of a pawn shop's cash for gold sign flickered across the street, accompanied by the soft hiss of tires gliding over the slick asphalt. "Where could he be?" she urged, worry seeping into her tone. The boy shrugged, wrapping the blanket more snugly around himself. Serena let out a breath, her teeth grazing her lip. She had witnessed countless evenings like this. Far too many children left in anticipation of someone who would not arrive. "Well, you can't remain out here, not in this chaos," she said with a gentle smile. "Step inside with me, all right? The air is cozy, and I have a delightful surprise in store for you." The boy paused for a moment, but then, gradually, he gave a nod. Serena carefully grasped the handles of the wheelchair and guided him into the diner, where a wave of warmth enveloped them instantly, the aroma of buttered toast and slightly charred pastries embracing them like a cozy blanket. She guided him to a booth close to the radiator, gently placing a fresh towel over his shoulders before kneeling to catch his gaze. "I'm Serena," she said, offering another bright smile. "What do they call you, darling?" The boy inhaled softly, his fingers gripping the edge of the blanket. "Daniel." Serena gave a satisfied nod. "That name carries a lot of weight. Are you feeling hungry?" He gave a reluctant nod. Serena chose not to linger for any further words from him. She glided toward the kitchen, effortlessly retrieving a fresh loaf of sourdough and slicing it with a deft hand. A few minutes later, she placed a steaming plate before him, featuring a grilled cheese sandwich, golden and crisp, accompanied by a bowl of tomato soup. It was her go-to comfort meal, reminiscent of the nights when her grandmother would prepare it, soothing her during the long, cruel hours of the world outside. "Text, this one's on me," she said, gently tucking a napkin into his lap. Daniel's blue eyes grew wide with wonder as he savored his first bite, the cheese stretching into long, gooey strands. "This is the best thing I've ever had," he murmured, his voice tinged with a sense of awe. Serena laughed softly, observing him as he eagerly consumed the sandwich. "Delicious meals enhance every experience," she remarked with a casual smile. Yet within her, the well-known pang lingered. The moment she laid eyes on someone so young, so small, already shouldering the burdens of existence. Unbeknownst to her, A pair of eyes lingered in the shadows. Across the street, a polished black Bentley lingered in the shadows, its tinted windows mirroring the vibrant glow of the diner's neon lights. Within the confines of the room, Raymond Holt remained still, his keen gray eyes fixed intently on the drama that was playing out in front of him. At 46, Raymond was a figure who had constructed his domain through mastery, exactitude, and an unyielding nature. Holt Dynamics pulsed at the core of Baltimore's tech landscape, a billion-dollar entity driven by precision rather than emotion. Raymond, the CEO, dedicated years to ensuring that nothing, no individual, no feeling, no vulnerability, could disrupt that goal. Here he stood, observing, absorbing, contemplating. Daniel was his offspring, and that woman, that waitress in a worn apron, in a shabby diner, was offering his son a meal at no cost. Raymond's jaw clenched. He found himself caught up on a call, dealing with an urgent matter involving his investors in Japan, and had instructed Daniel to wait by the diner for just a few moments. He was taken by surprise. He grabbed his phone, pressing the numbers with urgency. Nora, he spoke as soon as his assistant answered the call. Head over to Lexington Diner. No formal attire, no high heels. I'll require your presence in 20 minutes. A moment of silence lingered. Excuse me, sir? Raymond's hold on the phone grew firmer. Discover all there is to know about the woman who just nourished my son. After that, he ended the call. Within the cozy diner, Daniel erupted into laughter for the first time that evening, his legs playfully swinging beneath the table, a few soup stains adorning his chin. Serena dabbed at it with a napkin, her head shaking in disbelief. Looks like you're a bit of a messy eater, aren't you? Across the street, Raymond observed, his face a mask of contemplation, his thoughts racing, already piecing together the puzzle. Due to his disbelief in the value of kindness, he had faith in obligations, and whether she was aware of it or not, Serena Carter had just ensnared him in her web. Serena wiped her hands on her apron, casting a glance at the diner window where the rain continued to fall, creating uneven streaks down the glass. Daniel savored the final bite of his sandwich, his fingers now warm and steady. His face had shed that weary tightness, that protective expression that children his age shouldn't have to bear. A gentle wave of contentment washed over her. Another individual, another instance of compassion. That sufficed for her. Suddenly, the door creaked open. The brisk air swept in, heralding the arrival of a woman clad in jeans and a hoodie, her blonde hair neatly tucked under a well-worn Orioles cap. She felt like an outsider in the diner, not due to her attire but because of her demeanor. Sharp, calculated, and capable of assessing everything with just a single glance. Serena had been in this industry long enough to spot someone who wasn't just here for the coffee. The woman's eyes fixed on Daniel without hesitation. She eased her features, kneeling next to the boy. "Hello, champion. Time to go," she said with a casual air. Yet there was an unsettling quality to her tone. Too polished, too practiced. Daniel scowled, dabbing his lips with the napkin that Serena had provided. "However, I have yet to complete my milk." The woman, Nora, though Serena was yet to learn her name, tilted her head with an expertly crafted smile. "Something you can carry along. Your transportation is ready." Serena's instincts ignited. She had witnessed countless individuals being overlooked, wiped away, and sent off without a moment's consideration. There were countless instances where a person like her was not anticipated to inquire. Yet she consistently did. With her arms crossed, she scrutinized the woman intently. "You're familiar with him." The woman's smile remained unwavering, yet her posture revealed a slight tension in her shoulders, a faint glimmer of uncertainty passing through her demeanor. "Indeed," she replied with a certain grace. "I am his aunt." Serena remained unblinking. She glanced over at Daniel. "That's absolutely right, darling." Daniel paused for a moment longer than necessary. Nora's jaw clenched. Serena had matured in an environment where indecision could alter the course of her life. She recognized the visage of fear, understood the impact of power when it operated quietly. She was aware that this woman was not Daniel's aunt. She knelt beside him, locking gazes with his hesitant eyes. "Are you all right, darling?" she inquired, her tone gentler now, as if offering protection. "Are you planning to accompany her?" Daniel glanced back and forth between them. His fingers gripped the napkin tightly, the small knuckles turning pale. He mumbled that "she's here for my dad. I suppose I must." Serena remained still. Her instincts urged her to dig deeper, to insist on more, to ensure that this child was truly safe. Yet she found herself in this situation once more. A black woman pushing boundaries, probing deeper, attracting the kind of scrutiny that felt all too familiar. Nevertheless, she refused to let him leave without something in his possession. She approached the counter, picked up a chocolate chip cookie encased in wax paper, and gently placed it into Daniel's hand. She mentioned it was for the journey ahead. His tiny fingers wrapped around it, and for the first time that evening, a smile spread across his face. "Thank you, Serena. You're exceptional." Serena managed to smile, yet a tension gripped her chest. She observed as Nora pushed Daniel toward the door, the unspoken tension between them palpable and heavy in the air. Just before she stepped out into the rain, Nora cast a final glance back. She remained silent. She merely gazed. Serena understood it for what it truly was, a cautionary signal. As Nora drew near, the headlights of the Bentley flickered across the street. The rear door swung open just as she was about to knock, and Raymond emerged, his sturdy silhouette illuminated by the vibrant glow of the diner's neon sign. As soon as Daniel settled in, secured in the back seat, Raymond faced Nora. "So what's the verdict?" Nora let out a breath, pulling her hood away. She acknowledged her own sharpness. "I didn't find the peculiar tale convincing. Nearly pointed it out to me." Raymond's demeanor remained unchanged. Yet she released him. Nora remarked with emphasis that she had no choice. "You're familiar with the experience. A black woman creating a stir. She would have faced the consequences, not me." Raymond's jaw quivered, yet he remained silent. Nora crossed her arms. "She stands apart from the rest." Raymond was already aware of that. He had witnessed the instant Serena entered the rain without a second thought, the manner in which she addressed Daniel as if he truly mattered. He certainly wasn't a burden. He had observed individuals contort, praise, and scheme for his wealth, yet she remained oblivious to the fact that it was his son, and she had offered her assistance regardless. That rendered her perilous. He opened the car door and slid inside, his voice barely above a whisper. "I desire to know everything about her. Identity, location, history." He secured his seatbelt, his gaze fixed forward. "Please ensure it is on my desk by morning." Nora paused for a moment longer than necessary. "Excuse me, sir? At dawn." She let out a breath, then gave a nod. "Got it." The Bentley glided away from the curb, the diner receding into the distance in the rearview mirror. Yet, Raymond's mind drifted far from the shimmering city lights and the congestion looming in front of him. His mind wandered to Serena Carter, and the obligation he had to her. Serena made her way home that night, her sneakers drenched from the rain, the cold seeping deep into her bones. The paltry tips from the diner barely filled her pocket, insufficient for rent, much less for groceries. Yet the image of Daniel's smile lingered in her mind. Yet, an unsettling feeling lingered from the encounter, a disquiet that burrowed beneath her skin. She recognized that familiar, artificial smile on the woman's face, the way Daniel paused before responding. That was no ordinary stranger taking a child. That was an individual who clearly understood their craft. She ascended the stairs to her one-bedroom apartment on West Fayette Street, where the heating system struggled to function and the walls were so thin that she could hear her neighbor's television chatter from doors away. As soon as she closed the door, she pressed her back against it, dragging a hand down her face. She had discovered long ago the wisdom of steering clear of matters that didn't concern her. Yet this seemed distinct. This seemed off. Just as the sensation began to fade, a knock echoed through the door. Serena tensed. At this hour, there was no one to be found. She gazed through the peephole, and a wave of unease washed over her. A figure loomed on the opposite side, imposing and robust, clad in a luxurious black coat that seemed to surpass the cost of her monthly rent. His features were defined, his gray eyes icy and scrutinizing, as if he had dissected her in his thoughts before she even stepped through the threshold. She chose not to open it. Who might that be? A moment of stillness. Then a voice resonated with authority. Excessively restrained, Raymond Holt. The name held no significance for her. What is it that you seek? She inquired, her hand resting firmly on the lock. Yet another moment of stillness. To converse. Serena's instincts shouted a resounding no, yet her curiosity prevailed. With deliberate care, she unlatched the door and eased it open, revealing his face in sharp focus. He was an outsider in this building, in this part of the city, in her world. I don't know you, she stated plainly. His demeanor remained unchanged. Absolutely not. However, you are familiar with my son. Serena felt a sudden jolt in her chest. She observed him intently, noting how his figure filled the small doorway, how his coat clung to him, still wet from the rain, while his shoes remained impeccably clean. This was currency, strength, the sort that could shatter souls without ever raising a finger. She clutched the doorframe with increasing intensity. Daniel, she uttered with a measured cadence. You are his father. His nod was almost imperceptible. Last night, I found myself across the street. The cold that had crept into her very being became piercing. You were observing. I was indeed. Serena let out a breath through her nostrils. What does it matter? Are you here to express your dissatisfaction about me feeding your child? No. Raymond's gaze shifted, a mystery in his eyes. I'm here because I don't subscribe to the notion of charity, yet I firmly uphold the principle of honoring obligations. Without pausing for her reply, he retrieved an envelope from his coat and set it down on her worn kitchen table. Serena remained still. With a measured gaze, she regarded the envelope, thick and luxurious, the sort of paper that carried a certain heft, suggesting that its contents were anything but trivial. She gulped. What is that? An employment opportunity. Serena's mind came to a halt. She gazed up at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. Excuse me, what did you say? Raymond tilted his head slightly, assessing the extent of his patience with her. Position. At Holt Dynamics. 100,000. Advantages. The creations. Serena released a quick, astonished laugh. Do you really believe I want to be employed by a wealthy individual who thinks that writing a check settles everything? Raymond remained unperturbed. I doubt that charity is what you seek, Serena. That's the reason I'm not putting it out there. The way he spoke her name sent a tightness through her chest. She crossed her arms. You have no idea who I am. I possess sufficient knowledge. His voice resonated with a calm assurance, unwavering, reminiscent of someone who never inquired but simply made choices. I appreciate that you provided my son with food selflessly. I understand that you didn't view him as a burden. I'm aware that this is uncommon. Serena took a deep breath, attempting to dismiss the way his words stirred something deep within her. She cast a glance at the envelope, noting the absurd heaviness of it resting on her table. What specific tasks would I be undertaking at Holt Dynamics? Brewing a cup of coffee. Raymond's mouth twitched, a fleeting hint of amusement flickering across his face before it disappeared. No, you would be collaborating directly with me, managing discussions and fostering relationships with the public. You have a knack for connecting with others. I require an individual of that nature. Serena let out a derisive snort. You can manage just fine without my help. Your organization is filled with Ivy League graduates who would go to great lengths to secure a position like that. Raymond's expression finally changed, just a bit. That's precisely why I have my doubts about them. The quiet lingered in the air between them, weighty, anticipating. Serena sensed the heaviness of his proposal enveloping her, wrapping around the fringes of her dignity, her fatigue, her resolute determination to remain unpurchasable. However, 6 figures. 6 figures signified the end of late rent, the end of living paycheck to paycheck, the end of sleepless nights spent worrying about how to make her last $20 last. The sound of her mother's voice resonated in her mind. Never be indebted to these individuals, darling. It's clear that they never offer something without expecting something in return. Her jaw tightened. What makes me the right choice? Raymond maintained his focus on her eyes. For the first time, a spark ignited in his eyes. Because you saw my son, he said, his voice dropping, as if revealing a secret that weighed heavily on him. It's not my money. That's not how I'm referred to. You witnessed him. Serena felt a constriction in her throat. She cast a final glance at the envelope. With deliberate care, she lifted it from its resting place. I'll consider it, she whispered. Raymond observed her intently for a prolonged moment before offering a brief nod. Excellent. Without uttering a single word, he pivoted and walked away. Serena lingered in the silence long after the door closed, the envelope in her grasp feeling more burdensome than it ought to have been. For she was already aware. She was deeply contemplating it. She was poised to agree. The first day at Holt Dynamics was akin to entering a different realm, one where everything shone with an almost blinding brilliance, where wealth had the scent of newly polished marble, and the atmosphere was heavy with an undeniable sense of authority. Serena entered the imposing glass structure, clad in a department store blazer and thrifted heels, acutely aware of the attention she commanded as she traversed the lobby. It was a different sort of attention than what she was accustomed to. It wasn't a matter of curiosity. It was an assessment, computation, evaluation. She held her head high, shoulders squared with determination. She had been in environments where others had failed to recognize her true potential before. She understood the importance of standing firm. Raymond sat in his office, a vast, polished area with expansive windows that framed the cityscape. A desk so immaculate it resembled a work of art rather than a functional workspace. Without lifting his gaze, he motioned to the chair opposite him as she entered the room. You have arrived later than expected. Serena raised an eyebrow as she took a seat. In a mere 2 minutes, Raymond finally turned his gaze toward her, his gray eyes piercing and intense. Those are 2 minutes I can never reclaim. Serena let out a sigh, her head shaking slightly. She had just arrived, and he was already making his move. So, do you want me to be here or not? Raymond reclined, observing her intently. Only time will tell. Just as she was about to respond, the glass door swung open, revealing Nora, a tablet in her grasp, her face a mask of inscrutability. Serena noticed the woman's gaze sweep over her, as if she were evaluating her place in this setting. Heads up, she had already made up her mind that she didn't. Miss Carter, Nora remarked with a polished tone. Greetings from Holt Dynamics. Serena locked eyes with her, a gradual smile spreading across her face. Oh, are we focusing on last names now? Understood. It's a pleasure to see you once more, Ms. Winters. A brief spark danced in Nora's eyes, a fleeting moment, before she redirected her focus to Raymond. The reports for the upcoming negotiations with the Orion Group have been meticulously prepared. She passed him the tablet, hardly giving Serena a second look. Shall I provide her with an overview of the company's protocols? Raymond remained completely absorbed, not even glancing up. No, I shall. Serena found herself caught in a web of uncertainty, unsure whether it signaled a positive turn or a looming caution. Nora nodded quietly, yet as she reached the door, a brief moment of hesitation washed over her, prompting her to glance back at Serena one last time. Wishing you the best, she whispered softly. Serena inclined her head. Her tone lacked the warmth of support. It resonated like a cautionary note. She barely had a moment to ponder before Raymond plunged headfirst into his tasks. Let's skip the pleasantries. No compromise here. He retrieved a file, deftly gliding it across the table. He mentioned the Orion Group. There is a push to implement a contract aimed at reducing labor expenses by moving jobs abroad. This indicates job cuts. Countless. Serena glanced over the file, a wave of unease washing over her. So what exactly do you expect me to do? Persuade them against it? Raymond's eyes remained steadfast. I want you to showcase your unique talents, vibrant individuals. Serena reclined, her arms folded across her chest. Allow me to clarify this. You invited me here because you believe I can do what exactly? Win over these billionaires and inspire them to develop a sense of responsibility. Raymond remained utterly still, his gaze unwavering. Negative. I invited you here because I believe you grasp something that eludes them. Serena squinted her eyes in concentration. What is that? He inclined his body a bit forward. Those who possess nothing to lose often engage in the fiercest battles. The words resonated within her, striking a chord that was both profound and unvoiced. She gazed at him intently for a prolonged moment, then let out a sigh, shaking her head in disbelief. It's interesting how you often speak in enigmas, especially for someone at the helm of a tech empire. For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched, hinting at a smile, yet it remained just out of reach. And then, in an instant, the moment slipped away. He stood and declared, "Meetings at noon. Please make an effort to arrive on time." Serena sighed in exasperation but chose to remain silent. She was on a mission. The conference room had a chill that set it apart from the warmth of the rest of the building. Constructed entirely of steel and glass, it seemed intentionally crafted to evoke discomfort in those who encountered it. Serena positioned herself next to Raymond at the expansive mahogany table, confronting three men in impeccably tailored suits, each exuding a confidence that stemmed from the power to alter lives with just a signature. The group's leader, Philip Langford, 60 and white, with hair slicked back in a manner that exuded old-money arrogance, regarded her with barely a glance. Serena had encountered men of his kind previously, those who recognized worth solely in individuals resembling themselves. She kept it hidden. Raymond initiated the dialogue, getting right to the heart of the matter. The intention is to relocate production to Taiwan. You claim it will reduce expenses and enhance productivity. He took a moment to stop. I believe it will dismantle a workforce that has established this company's foundation for more than 10 years. Langford offered a measured, tight-lipped smile, one that failed to illuminate his eyes. There seems to be a misunderstanding regarding Raymond. It's nothing personal. It's merely a matter of business. Serena's fingers curled subtly beneath the table. Not personal. That phrase had echoed in her life far too often. When her landlord suddenly increased the rent due to developers' plans to rejuvenate the neighborhood. When her mother was let go from the textile plant due to the discovery of more affordable labor abroad. When businesses like this dismantle communities and label it as strategy. She smiled, yet there was an undeniable strength behind it. Amusing, she remarked, tilting her head. It's merely a matter of business until your own livelihood is at stake. Langford's gaze shifted to her, a sudden intensity igniting in his eyes. Raymond remained silent. He merely observed. Langford let out a sharp breath through his nose, as if he had far more important matters to attend to than engaging with those beneath him. Indeed you are. Serena remained unblinking. Serena Carter. Holt Dynamics. He scanned her briefly, and she caught the precise instant he decided she was unworthy of his attention. She was indifferent. She had faced underestimation in the past. Langford reclined in his chair, gesturing dismissively with a wave of his hand. I understand, dear. Do you believe we are the antagonists in this story? However, this pertains to figures. It's all about what is most logical. Darling. Serena's jaw tightened. She inclined her body, mirroring his stance. Very well, she replied with a calm demeanor. Let's discuss figures. She gracefully pushed a document across the table. This is an analysis of the implications of offshoring production. Certainly, you reduce expenses initially. However, in 3 years, as labor demands increase, your new manufacturing hub becomes costly. Countless millions will be spent on restructuring, rehiring, and managing public relations crises when the headlines scream about the betrayal of American workers for profit. She lightly struck the paper. That's a certainty. That's an examination of the market. Langford cast a fleeting look at the file, yet refrained from making contact with it. Serena maintained her focus on him, didn't flinch, showed no sign of hesitation. You can choose wisely at this moment, she said, her voice steady. Fatal. Alternatively, you might find yourself justifying to your investors how your immediate profits have ultimately jeopardized their future returns. Quietude. At last, Langford let out a breath, reached for the paper, and quickly glanced over it. Raymond remained expressionless. Yet, Serena sensed the change in the atmosphere. She had just transformed the landscape. Langford placed the document on the table, his face a mask of inscrutability. We will take another look at the proposal. Raymond gave a slight nod. Make sure you follow through. The meeting concluded soon after. As Langford and his associates departed, Serena sensed the intensity of Raymond's stare upon her. She glanced over at him. So what's the verdict? Raymond observed her intently for a prolonged moment before finally stating, I knew there was a purpose behind bringing you on board. Serena wore a sly grin. Absolutely, you certainly did. For the first time since entering Holt Dynamics, a sense of belonging washed over her. 2 months in, Serena believed she had discovered her groove at Holt Dynamics, or so she thought. She had mastered the art of maneuvering through the corridors of influence, learning to assert herself in a realm that often overlooked her presence. She confronted Philip Langford and emerged triumphant. She had demonstrated to Raymond and to herself that she was not merely present as a symbolic gesture, a corporate pet project. She was present, for this was her rightful place. However, triumphs at the pinnacle proved to be fleeting. The company found itself in a precarious situation. Serena found herself in a predicament, and someone had just orchestrated her downfall. Nora intercepted her in the hallway just as she returned from a client meeting. We have a problem, she stated, her voice cutting through the air with a sense of immediacy. Serena scowled. Identify the issue. Nora remained silent. She simply passed Serena a printed email. Serena felt a heavy weight in her stomach the moment she laid eyes on what was inside. The document was a corporate report containing sensitive financial information. The information had found its way into the hands of the media, and the email that is being forwarded. It bore Serena's name. The words faded into a haze. The atmosphere in the room changed, becoming thick and oppressive. She compelled herself to inhale. This does not belong to me. Nora acknowledged this with a simple, I know. Yet, there is a desire for it to be so. Serena's heartbeat echoed in her ears. She had encountered enough scenarios like this to understand how quickly they unraveled. A black woman in a dominant white environment was not afforded the benefit of the doubt. She was never afforded the presumption of innocence. She felt the weight of guilt the moment they declared it so. She clutched the paper tightly, her eyes darting over the words once more. Has anyone else come across this? Raymond, Nora remarked. And the panel. Her breath caught in her throat. The panel. Soil. She had fought tooth and nail to secure her place in this company, and now they were poised to tear her away. Raymond's office had an unusual chill in the air. Perhaps it was merely the intensity of his gaze upon her. His hands rested together on the desk. His expression was a mystery, yet his gaze, those piercing gray eyes, were examining her intently, assessing her worth. Serena experienced a tightening sensation in her chest. Please tell me I wasn't mistaken, he implored. Minimal. Regulated. Serena forcefully placed the email on his desk. This does not reflect who I am. Raymond averted his gaze from the paper. There was no necessity for him to do so. I wish to have faith in that, he stated, his voice unwavering. However, this is a significant breach, Serena. Countless opportunities for visibility. Shares decline. Inquiries. Do you grasp the severity of this situation? Serena leaned in, her hands firmly resting on his desk. I comprehend completely. I also recognize that the person responsible is fully aware of their actions. I was the obvious choice, wasn't I? The outlier. The woman exuding an abundance of self-assurance. Who would take my word over that of an executive with a decade of experience? Raymond remained unyielding. However, he also didn't express any disagreement. The quiet lingered far too long. Serena's fingers clenched tightly, pressing into her palms. Do you believe I was responsible for this? Raymond maintained his focus on her eyes. Negative. At last, the breath she had been holding escaped her lips. However, he went on, the board does. Serena muttered curses quietly to herself, moving back and forth restlessly. She sensed the grip of the noose growing ever tighter. What comes next? She inquired, struggling to articulate the words. Raymond let out a breath, his hand gliding over his jawline. We uncover the true source of the leak. Serena stood still. We, not you, not I, we. For the first time since she entered, the ice within her chest began to fracture. Raymond rose, donning his suit jacket once more. Nora is currently tracing the origin of the email, but it has been routed through an external server. It seems that someone has skillfully concealed their actions. He locked eyes with her. We must elevate our intelligence. Serena folded her arms, fixing him with a piercing gaze. What happens if we fail to locate them promptly? What if the board chooses to let me go? Raymond's jaw clenched. Then we ensure they feel the weight of their choices. Serena observed him intently. Raymond Holt was not the type of individual who offered assurances. Yet, for the very first time, she found herself believing him. And whoever had orchestrated her situation, they were on the brink of discovering the true nature of the battle they had just unleashed. The truth came to light more swiftly than they had anticipated. Serena and Nora toiled through the night, meticulously sifting through server logs, following the trail of digital breadcrumbs. The one who orchestrated her downfall had taken precautions, yet their efforts fell short. The leak was funneled through a secondary account associated with Eric Calloway, a senior executive boasting a decade at Holt Dynamics, known for maintaining a pristine image while allowing others to handle the less savory tasks. By morning, they gathered sufficient evidence to ensure his downfall. Serena burst into the boardroom, refusing to be called in like some sort of miscreant. The atmosphere was charged. A multitude of refined, influential figures in impeccably fitted suits fixating on her as if she were already a memory. Raymond occupied the head of the table, his expression a mystery. Miss Carter, a board member, an older gentleman with a thin-lipped smirk, motioned towards the vacant chair opposite them. I trust you understand the purpose of your presence here. Serena remained standing. She had no intention of doing so. Text, I do, she said, her voice unwavering. And I trust you all realize you're on the brink of making a costly error. A glimmer of amusement danced across Raymond's face, yet he chose to remain uninvolved. Miss Carter, a member of the board, began to speak, but she interrupted him. I was an obvious choice, wasn't I? She remarked, moving back and forth. The recent addition to the team, the outlier, the individual you could hold accountable and conveniently overlook. She paused, setting a hefty folder down on the table. Unfortunately, you chose the incorrect option. She pushed the folder across the table toward them. The quiet lingered as they perused the documents, their faces transforming from indifference to a growing sense of unease. Eric Calloway occupied a seat 2 down, his complexion growing increasingly ashen with each passing moment. These are emails that have been traced, Serena continued. Funds transfer between banks, communications with journalists. Each one was connected to Calloway. Not I. She folded her arms across her chest. And before you inquire, indeed, the copies are already in the possession of our legal team. The press does as well. If we're discussing damage control, that's where I would begin. A soft whisper floated across the room. Calloway sprang to his feet, his voice edged with urgency and a hint of desperation. This situation is utterly absurd. She's just pretending. Serena glanced at Raymond, arching an eyebrow. Could it be that I am? Raymond finally spoke, his voice cutting through the silence like a shard of glass. Absolutely not. The words struck with the force of a punch. Calloway's lips pressed together tightly. Raymond rose, meticulously adjusting his cufflinks. Effective immediately, Eric Calloway's employment has been terminated. All necessary legal measures will be taken. He allowed the gravity of his words to linger in the air before shifting his focus to the rest of the room. And if anyone else in this company believes they can engage in similar tactics, consider this a cautionary note. The ensuing silence was complete. Serena remained expressionless. There was no necessity for her to do so. She emerged victorious. 2 weeks later, she found herself standing next to Raymond at Daniel's graduation. The boy beamed at her from his wheelchair, clutching his diploma as if it were the most precious treasure imaginable. "I told you I'd make it," he declared, his chest swelling with pride. Serena chuckled, playfully tousling his hair. "I had complete confidence in it all along." Raymond observed them, his typical composed demeanor slightly more tender. "You did well, Carter," he remarked. She wore a sly grin. "You bet I did." Daniel cast a quick look back and forth between them. "Are you all planning to embrace or something?" Raymond let out a heavy sigh. "Definitely not." Serena let out an exasperated sigh. "Absolutely not." Daniel simply smiled. After a lengthy period, Serena experienced a profound sense of accomplishment, as if she had created something genuine, something significant. She still had more to say. Years later, Serena Carter found herself in the executive office of Holt Dynamics, her name now etched on the door as the vice president of corporate strategy. What began as a test, had transformed into a purpose. Under her guidance, the company broadened its ethical labor initiatives, introduced mentorship programs, and established collaborations with minority-owned businesses. A new community center opened across town, named after the Carter Holt Foundation, dedicated to providing education and job opportunities for underserved youth. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Daniel, now a college freshman, stood next to her, beaming like a child who had just received a complimentary meal at a diner. Due to compassion. That was the sort of investment that consistently yielded returns.